Parents, coaches, students, I want to thank you for being here today. Today, the resolution we will be debating is the U.S. government has the right to infringe upon their citizens' right to privacy in the name of national security. Based on the coin toss earlier this morning, the affirmative team is Oak Ridge, and they will be arguing for national security to take priority. And the negative team, All Saints, will be arguing for the right to privacy to take priority. The All Saints debaters today are Lucy Reason, who will be reading the opening statement, Bryson Clark, Jay Motherall, and Sarah Tyree, who will be in charge of cross-examination. Savannah Chota will be covering the second speech, Jack Delp, who will be covering the rebuttal, Trevor Dugan, who will be covering the closing speech, and Sienna Del Conte, who will be taking notes. The All Saints coach is Lynn Wood. The Oak Ridge debaters are Eric Fogg, who will be reading the opening statement, Zaki Faruqi, Nicholas Gore, and Austin Foster, who will be in charge of cross-examination, Sam Davis, who will be covering the second speech, Camille Mishak, who will be covering the rebuttal, and Maya Matthews, who will be covering the closing speech. And of course, Oak Ridge is led by Mrs. Reddick. The judges, let's introduce the judges for today's round. Dr. Sarah Schechter, who is the head of lower school. Mr. Jared Colley, upper school English teacher and department chair. And Mrs. Ashley Reed, fourth grade history teacher. Our timekeeper for today is Daphne McCleary. We are now ready to begin today's debate round. We will start with Oak Ridge, who will be giving an affirmative opening statement. It will be 4 minutes long. The debater will read a prepared speech giving arguments that support the resolution. Good luck to our teams.
According to Jody Rehl, Governor of Connecticut, at the end of the day, the goals are simple: safety and security. Because we agree with Governor Rehl that security must trump everything else. We affirm the resolution that the U.S. government has the right to infringe upon the citizens' right to privacy in the name of national security. According to the U.S. Department of Defense, national security is a collective term encompassing both national defense and foreign relations of the United States. Specifically, the condition provided by A, a military or defense advantage over any foreign nation or group of nations, B, a favorable foreign relations position, or C, a defense posture capable of successfully resisting hostile or destructive action from within or without, overt or covert. Because the threats to national security are constantly evolving, it is impossible to give a more specific definition. The resolution does assume there is a real threat to national security determined by the government. Our first argument is that the main purpose of joining society and creating a government is to keep us safe and to provide protection that we cannot provide for ourselves. U.S. citizens expect to be protected by the government. The government does its best to provide the maximum amount of rights, but all citizens understand that our rights are not limited. We cannot use our rights to harm another person. For example, you cannot use your right to freedom of speech to yell fire in a crowded theater. We know that the government has to balance our rights with protecting other citizens. The most important rights are natural rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which are listed in the Constitution. Life is the prerequisite to all other rights. If your right to be alive is violated, then how can you even have, let alone, use your right to privacy? National security is a prerequisite for any and all other rights protections. If we don't let the government provide this essential protection, we can't provide for ourselves, who will? Our second argument is that the right to privacy has to be limited because the harms that occur are not nearly as significant as when national security is lost. National security involves threats to the entire country or to a large part of the country and threatens our lives. Limits on the right to privacy, on the other hand, do not threaten our very existence. Furthermore, the right to privacy is only limited, not taken away in situations where suspected acts of terrorism are being thwarted. In fact, much of the information is analyzed by computers, and many people don't even know this process is going on, so it doesn't affect their daily lives. According to the NSA, incoming data is analyzed against a continually evolving threat matrix and is assigned to an action code. The The vast majority of these transactions are routed directly to a permanent static storage state. In fact, for most Americans, your data is never accessed or viewed by anyone within the U.S. government unless some future event triggers an inquiry. We work closely with our partners in the intelligence community to ensure that our data is released only as a result of a national security request. Our third argument is that these limitations on our privacy are necessary for protecting national security. The Patriot Act outlines the steps our government needs to take when it limits privacy to protect national security and the benefits we as citizens receive. According to the Department of Justice, the Patriot Act gives the U.S. government the power to use surveillance against more crimes of terror and to follow sophisticated terrorist treatment of evade detection. Clearly, the government needs these options when it comes to protecting national security and preventing another 9/11. We must give our government the power to protect our national security.
Thank you, Oak Ridge. At this time, all saints will be presenting their negative opening statement, again 4 minutes, with prepared speech-giving arguments that oppose the resolution.
Hello, my name is Lucy Reason, and I am representing All Saints Episcopal School on the negative side. We believe that the government does not have the right to infringe upon their citizens' right to privacy in the name of national security because there is not enough evidence to show that terrorism has evolved into something more threatening since the 1960s and 70s. Given that governments are likely to take advantage of anti-terrorist mania and seize the moment to strengthen their regimes, it is not acceptable to curb citizens' rights because of isolated events. Our first point is that the Fourth Amendment guarantees our right to privacy. If we give out too much freedom, we are letting the terrorists win because the freedom we wish to protect and hold so dear is being sacrificed in order to protect our country. In other words, are we willing to allow those who wish us harm strong-arm us into compromising our own constitutional rights? This is erroneous and undermines the freedom of our forefathers intended for us, and that many have died fighting for. In a recent online poll by debate.org, 67% of people believe it is not justifiable to violate certain civil liberties in the name of national security. It cannot therefore be right for a government who represents us to ignore the voice of the majority. Our second point is that we can never completely prevent cruel and ruthless things from happening. This is a fact that will never change, whatever laws or actions are put into place in the name of national security. Whenever the government closes down options for terrorists to harm us, they will, sadly, find other ways to attack us. It is vital that the freedom of the individual always be protected, and giving it up or marginalizing it for the sake of policies that ultimately do not guarantee our safety is flawed. Furthermore, the risk posed by terrorism is highly exaggerated by the government who wants to be scared. The National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism has identified that fewer than 500 people, excluding 9/11, died in the U.S. from terrorist attacks between 1970 and 2010. More people have died on Texas roads this year, so we should not be subjected to irrelevant and unnecessary surveillance. Our last point is that the intrusion of our privacy in the name of national security will most likely result in an abuse of power by someone in government. Because government agencies can look over our data and undertake surveillance on anybody in the name of national security, it is arguable that this information will inevitably be used in ways unintended. If the revelations of Edward Snowden have taught us anything, it is that the levels and extent of surveillance on us is far greater than most people anticipated or believed possible. Thus, we argue that it would be better for our government to be more proactive by focusing more on the causes of terrorism and what makes people want to harm us instead of responding reactively and responding to stopping terrorism by infringing upon our constitutional rights. Thank you.
Thank you, all saints. We will now be moving into our first cross-examination. The goal of cross-examination is for the debaters to clarify any arguments that are confusing and then point out holes or problems with their opponent's arguments. The affirmative will be asking questions for 2 minutes, and then we will follow with the negative asking questions for 2 minutes. So if we could please have those that will be participating in the first cross-examination. And if I could ask if you guys would step in front of the podium, please. Thank you.
true that you used a website known as debate.org for one of your sources?
Yes, that is true.
Did you know that debate.org is not a commendable source because that's just where people post their opinions?
No, I did not.
Is it true that you also said that there are barely any new ways to threaten national security since the 1960s?
No, I did not.
You mentioned Edward Snowden. Could you elaborate on why you think he is right?
He is just one of the people that we found information on, and that information agreed with a lot of other sources, so we thought it would be valid.
Okay. Is it true that you said that it is unnecessary for the government to take the precautions that they take to ensure that our lives stay safe?
Yes, that is true.
Do you agree that the only thing unnecessary are the death of people caused by other people?
Can you restate the question, please?
Do you agree that it is unnecessary for people to die because of other people?
I still do not understand this question.
Do you agree that it is unnecessary for people to die because other people killed them?
It is not necessary for people to die.
Exactly. So why would it be unnecessary for the government to take precautions to limit that from happening?
Some precautions taken by the government are taken too far and are not necessary.
Which of those precautions are taken too far?
For example, having phone calls without court orders.
I'm sorry? Could you repeat what you said?
Time.
You stated that safety and security should trump all our right to privacy. What do you have to say about the fact that in the Constitution, rights are guaranteed, our rights to privacy are guaranteed before our right to safety?
Our right to life is guaranteed before our right to privacy. That comes before everything else.
You also said that the main purpose of joining society was to be safe, but when this country was being founded, it's not about being safe. It was about having our rights to freedom and privacy. What do you say about that?
When this country was founded, it was a really long time ago, and since then times have changed.
Do you think, yes, times have changed in terms of security, but not privacy?
Times have changed in terms of privacy. Now there's the internet and social media, and ways to communicate with someone across the world and find terrorist attacks.
Okay. Do you not think that the Constitution should have more power than this Patriot Act that was made only 11 years ago and had people trying to get rid of it since?
Yes, I do believe that the Constitution should have more power, and it does. And in the Constitution, it states that life is insured for all safety is insured for all of its citizens.
And it also says that we have a right to privacy, and I agree that we should have safety, but not at the risk of our privacy.
Why? Have you ever? I'm assuming you're familiar with the term that every citizen is entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You'll notice that privacy is nowhere mentioned in that. You'll also notice that it's in descending order of importance, and life comes first.
Privacy could also be seen as happiness. People are not happy without their privacy.
People.
Okay, at this time, each side will now be given 1 minute of prep time to prepare for the affirmative and negative speeches and rebuttals.
Our fourth argument is that the United States is a representative democracy, so we vote and let our trusted officials make decisions for us. Franklin D. Roosevelt once said, "Let us never forget that the government is ourselves, and not an alien power over us." The ultimate rulers of our democracy are not our president and senators and congressmen and government officials, but the voters of this country. As a citizen, we know that we only see a part of the government does and decides. Our vote indicates that we agree in letting a trusted official on our behalf make the right decisions. We trust that the government officials are carefully weighing the risks to national security before they limit our right to privacy. If we disagree with our government's decisions, we have the power to protest and even vote elected officials out of office. Please remember this resolution is not about the government abusing its power. The resolution simply asked if the government has the right to infringe upon the right to privacy in the name of national security. As long as the government has a credible threat to national security, their limits on the right to privacy are justified. Our fifth argument is that the affirmative is not giving the government a blank check to limit privacy. They still have to prove there is a credible threat to national security before they can act. According to Michael Pearson of CNN, once the government obtains telephone records, they go in a database where they cannot be accessed unless a judge gives the go-ahead in a national security investigation. Remember, the resolution only states that the government has the right to infringe on their citizens' privacy, not that they're going to be acting on this right all the time. The question is more a matter of authority instead of action. Citizens often get paranoid that they think that the government is watching them at all times, but this is not true. Do you really think that the government has time to be searching and watching everyone when they have to deal with things like war and immigration? We have to understand that the ability to infringe upon privacy is just a safety precaution. The Constitutional Rights Foundation suggested that the officials familiar with it say the NSA eavesdrops without warrants upon the 500 people in the USA at any given time. But the list changes as some names are added and others dropped. Your privacy is only infringed upon if you seem suspicious. Therefore, if you didn't do anything suspicious, you have nothing to worry about. The negative side stated that the right to privacy is necessary to limit the government and prevent it from abusing its power. The affirmative response is the government's main job. The government's main job is for protecting our safety. We must give the government enough power to protect us. The negative also stated the government has abused its power in the past and used national security to cover up or even justify its actions. Well, we are not just justifying abuses of power. Better to err on the side of caution rather than risk not securing national security. The negative also stated there is no guaranteed benefits on the affirmative because there's only the potential threat to national security. On the affirmative response, we have to take all threats seriously because we don't have any way to know which ones will actually harm national security. And the government also does not want to gamble with American lives. The negative also stated that the government is abusing its power by using national security to cover it up. Well, the officials that are familiar with the NSA say that the NSA eavesdrops without warrants up on the 500 people in the United States at any given time. The list changes as some names are added or dropped.
Thank you, Oak Ridge. At this time, I'll sing with the second negative speech in rebuttal. You have the floor for 4 minutes.
I'm speaking for the negative side. You have yet to bring up evidence that this actually works. Yes, we have this because of 9/11, but is it just a mind of peace we give ourselves to make each other feel better? In a world where countries turn on each other, government versus the people, and nothing is safe. We brought up the Fourth Amendment because it prohibits unreasonable searches and seizures and requires any warrant to be judicially sanctioned and supported by a probable cause. If the government is simply spying on us to make sure we aren't terrorizing each other, where is the probable cause? Random searches in airports are based on what context? Is it because our suitcase looks suspicious? And if that is the reason, isn't that unreasonable? You also brought up profiling, but the real question is, how can you tell if someone is suspicious? Because the way they're dressed or their religion or ethnicity? citizens don't know that it's happening. That is actually the problem, because if we don't know what's happening, then where is our freedom, and where does it stop? Individual rights come before security. The Constitution has been here for hundreds of years. The Patriots Act, maybe 10. Yes, limits are necessary, but not to this extent. You also said that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness does not go with privacy. When really, liberty is privacy, and if we aren't free to say what we want to say and express ourselves, where's the liberty in that? Thank you.
Thank you, all sides. At this time, we're going to move directly into our second cross-examination. The affirmative will ask questions for 2 minutes, followed by the negative. Again, if you guys would please step in front of the podium.
In your second argument, you stated that terrorist attacks killed 500 people, but don't you agree that 500 people is a lot of lives to be killed?
Yes, 500 people is a lot of lives to be killed, but preserving people's rights is way more important.
So you're telling me that preserving a secret is more important than 500 people's lives and maybe like 100 grieving parents or children?
Preserving the rights of other people should come first than security. We believe that the nation needs to have the country needs to have rights to ensure the safety of others, yes. But what people need to know is that this country was fought for rights. We didn't have rights when we were fighting the British. So if we take those rights away from others, then we're no greater than other countries.
In your rebuttal, you stated that individual rights should go over security. Can you please explain to me how that individual rights should be more important than security?
Individual rights is a far greater idea than security, because if you don't have rights, then you don't really have a country. You need to have individual rights for other people.
But we're making security so that we can be more secure, and when we're more secure, we can have a better life and have a more positive outcome.
Yes, but with security, you also have to take into effect that some rights will be trampled on by other people, especially the government.
Yes, but if the government goes over a right to secure a couple of hundred or even thousands of lives, don't you agree that would be more important?
The rights of no. Okay. If you are not justifying abuse to power, isn't the Fourth Amendment stating right to define privacy abusing power?
Well, the right to privacy, as I have stated before, is not as important as death or life.
Do you think infringing on these rights is done out of fear or protection?
Infringing on these rights is done out of protection so that we can keep lives safe in the United States.
But couldn't you agree that the government using all these excuses for trying to protect us and saying how like ISIS could potentially blow us up or something, wouldn't you agree that they're trying to scare us into going with what the government wants?
No, they're only letting us know what that might happen, and don't you think us, the people, would like to know what is going on in the United States, our country?
And finally, why would you disagree with the government if they are elected for the people, by the people, and accountable to the people?
We are not disagreeing that for the government. We elected the government, but we can also impeach them.
If you're not justifying abuse to power, isn't the Fourth Amendment stating right to privacy?
The Fourth Amendment is vaguely stating right to privacy, but the the right to privacy, as I've said before, is not as important as the right to living, because what is privacy if you're dead?
Thank you.
At this time, each team will have 1 minute of prep as they prepare their rebuttals.
No, unfortunately I'm not.
So the affirmative with 2 minutes.
Our first argument stated that the main purpose of joining a society and creating a government is to keep us safe and provide protections that we cannot provide for ourselves. Our second argument stated that the right to privacy has to be limited because the harms that occur are not nearly as significant as the national security that is lost. Our third argument stated that these limitations on our privacy are necessary for protecting national security. Our fourth argument stated that the United States is a representative democracy, so we vote and let our trusted officials make decisions for us. And our fifth argument stated that the affirmative is not giving the government a blank check to limit our private privacy. You said that, in cross-examination, you asked where do our rights end. Don't you think that our rights end where others begin? You also said that you also asked what was the point in being in a government without privacy. But the reason we join a government is to be safe, and most people join in order to gain more individual rights. Also, the right to privacy is an individual right. Thank you.
Thank you, Oak Ridge. At this time, All Saints with the negative rebuttal. You will have 2 minutes.
In your first rebuttal, you stated that the U.S. is a democracy, which means that the people have the power to vote and decide. But in times of crisis, the government can use their power abusively by restricting laws, making them tighter, and lessening the rights of the people. When that happens and the government has to use abusive powers during times of crisis, it shows that terrorism has been successful in pushing the U.S. away from their liberty. The Constitution also states in the Fourth Amendment that the people have their rights to civil liberties. The Patriot Act, though, states that the government can use their national security in times of crisis. But a constitutional amendment has more authority over the laws and rights of the people than an act made 10 years ago does. The Patriot Act was made hurriedly because of one incident of terrorism. The United States has always been extremely superstitious about attacks and are easily pushed when threatened. So, this shows that the government can use their power to harm the people by taking away their rights. Thank you.
Thank you, All Saints. At this time, we will have our third and final cross-examination. Each side will be given 2 minutes to ask questions. The affirmative will ask questions first. Of All Saints, if you would please stand in front of the podium.
How does the abuse of power relate to the resolution?
The resolution.
Our resolution.
Your resolution. uses its power when the Patriot Act gives it the power to infringe on the citizens' rights.
But our resolution is not about the abuse of power. Our resolution is discussing there being a real-time crisis. So how does the abuse of power relate to our resolution?
The Patriot Act could lead to abuse of its power. If they are looking at all of our calls and digital communication with all the citizens and with foreign people who are contacting citizens or being contacted, then that is abusive and that's unnecessary. And why would they need to look at our calls if we don't have anything that's...
Did you know that all the information the government collects actually only goes onto a solid state drive and is only accessed in the case of an investigation comes up? Only about less than 1% of all information collected is ever accessed.
But people who have access to that could potentially give that to other countries.
Yes, but that is not related to the resolution.
But you asked me about Edward
Would you
Snowden.
agree that in order to use your privacy, you must be safe?
Could you repeat the question?
Would you agree that in order to use your privacy, you must be safe?
You can be safe using the Constitution, which also gives you a right to privacy.
But how can you use your rights if you're dead?
We're not saying that you're dead. We're saying that you should have privacy and that the safety that is given to you by the Patriot Act is not guaranteed. It is the thought of safety that is guaranteed. It is the feeling of safety that is guaranteed.
You stated that the Constitution mentions privacy. Where does it mention this?
In the Fourth Amendment. And in the Fifth Amendment, it also,
The Fourth
which the
Amendment-
Patriot Act also violates, it says that notice should also be given to persons whose privacy have been compromised. And you also said, one of your first arguments, the citizens do not know. You said in one of your first arguments that President FDR said that the government is the people. But if the government is corrupt, don't you believe that the country is corrupt?
The resolution does not state that the government is corrupt.
I'm not saying that, but don't you agree that it would be corrupt?
Then that's not a valid argument.
Benjamin Franklin once said, those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. How do you think that the Patriot Act gives you liberty?
The Patriot Act was designed in order to prevent another 9/11. When 9/11 happened, it affected the country greatly, and the Patriot Act was created in order to ensure our safety.
It was created to ensure our safety, but wasn't that a long time ago?
You're saying,
What are your others?
you're saying the Constitution is more important than the Patriot Act? Both are
The
very important.
Constitution was made. Sorry, that's not a question.
Both of them were created in order to help keep us in a safe situation, because if we aren't safe, then we don't have any of our rights.
Wasn't the country made to give us liberty and to give us privacy that we were not allowed, as you said, when we joined society?
Yes, but you have to find a happy medium between the two. Because if you're not safe, you can't use any of your rights. We're not saying you need to become a communist country, but we're saying we need to find a happy medium, and safety and privacy need to be balanced. But safety is always more important than privacy.
What
when you're
examples
talking
do you
about
have
rights.
to support your argument that we're preventing another 9/11?
You stated that 9/11 was your argument. That was one of your arguments.
But do you have any examples to state that the Patriot Act has worked to prevent another 9/11?
Yes, the Patriot Act was created to prevent another.
But are there any examples of it working?
You haven't given me a chance to answer that. The Patriot Act was
Please
created.
answer my question.
Thank you, both sides. At this time, we have 2 minutes of prep for our closing statements. The only time during the debate that the negative will go first. This speech is a chance for the debaters to explain why they should win the round. Don't expect them to discuss all of the arguments, and they won't have time for sure. They should focus on the key arguments and convince you why the arguments they are winning should mean that they should win the round. So at this time, the negative will go first. You will have 2 minutes.
Throughout this debate, the opposing side has consistently said, how will your rights help you if you're dead? However, in 2011, a fun statistic is that only 17 U.S. citizens were killed due to terrorist attacks, and all of those were outside of the continental U.S. So the threat of terrorism to U.S. citizens is not that great. It does not substantiate a claim to take away our civil liberties. They've claimed that the right to life, as they put it, is more important than the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. They say this goes in descending order of importance. However, privacy is one of your civil liberties as well as it pertains to your pursuit of happiness. It does not go in descending order of importance, but rather just an order. They have provided no examples where any act of taking away privacy has ever worked to prevent a terrorist attack. Let's also realize that the majority of terrorists are not in the continental U.S. Therefore, any monitoring of our citizens will be fruitless, will come from a fruitless tree. If you do manage to catch any terrorists, it will be someone who likely wasn't doing much to begin with. They didn't know how to encrypt an email. They didn't know how to protect their privacy. Because if you have nothing to fear, you have nothing to hide. But if you have something to hide, you'll make sure no one else finds it. Thank you.
Thank you, all saints. At this time, Oak Ridge will be presenting the closing argument. 2 minutes.
At the end of the day, the goals are simple. Safety over security. We agree with Jody Well, the governor of Connecticut, and the resolution that the U.S. government has the right to infringe upon citizens' privacy in the name of national security. Now let us remember that the resolution does not assume does assume that there is a threat to national security, not a potential situation. And so when there is an actual real threat to the U.S., we need to be able to take action and avoid these kind of traumatic situations. And yes, 17 lives are going to be important in the end, because overall we want to have safety over privacy. Also, so in this case, we should be able to look through phones and emails, and etc., as we mentioned in further process. We should be able to look through these things in order to prevent these attacks from happening. Also, the Patriot Act, well, we don't know if it's working because we can only assume that it is, because we can assume that they have been preventing these attacks because we're not hearing about them on the national news as a big traumatic situation. Also, I'd like to remind you that we have chosen elected officials to make these decisions for us, because we don't need to know every little decision that the government makes, because if so, then we would also be letting criminals know these kinds of decisions as well, and then where would we be? Next, people create governments, first and foremost, to gain security, not for our rights. So when we're joining a government, we're joining someone who's going to protect us. That's why our military is so important, and things like this. So also, a lot of things improve the quality of life. Things like vacations and chauffeurs. So also, when you're improving the quality of life, you're not really just focusing on security or your rights to privacy. Also, the need for national security is a big term, and we need to take care of individual situations, and we need to be able to do that with having a big term for national security. Thank you.
That does conclude our debate today. If we would please recognize both teams for doing fantastic. I'm going to ask, please, if the judges, I think we have a room set up in the library. If you would please excuse yourselves, and we will wait till you get back. While we are waiting, and I invite judges and audience, we do
Judges saying it was an honor getting to watch both schools perform. And I want you all to know that we had to add these numbers up more than once. I'm an English teacher. Don't do that. And it was very close. So it was a very, very close debate. The winner, we decided, after we added it up, goes to the Oak Ridge School. So congratulations. We would like to commend Zachy on the the Oak Ridge School side for his performance in the debate. We felt like he did a great job in the cross-examination and the rebuttal. So congratulations. Let's give it a roll.
Mr. Connolly, would that be your top speaker for the affirmative?
Yes, for the affirmative, that is our top speaker. And our top speaker on the negative side goes to Trevor. So congratulations. A few comments. We all noted that Oak Ridge, you guys appeared confident, prepared, you had strong logic in your arguments, and you stayed on topic. One advice we would give you guys is to keep the chatter down a little bit while the other team is going. So, on the All Saints side, we thought you guys were excellent listeners, that you addressed the arguments that Oak Ridge put forward, and we were impressed by that, and you responded well to questions. What we would say is work with some eye contact when presenting. So, thank you very much. It was an honor to be able to judge. So, thank you.
And I just want to say, and I know there's been a few of us that have talked, and I do feel All Saints and Oak Ridge are very compatible when it comes to debating. I feel like every time that we're in a debate with you guys, it is very close, very academic, but comfortable. I don't feel that there's a high stress, which is very important for these guys. Being in middle school, it is sometimes hard to get up and talk in front of people. I very much enjoyed the clash today between, I think it was Austin, is it Sarah? That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that a lot. All Saints, I want to thank you guys for coming today, and we look forward to next year. So, thank you guys. Yes.